Welcome everyone to We Are Endurance webinar series. I have a great pleasure to introduce you to Casey. Casey is the marketing director of Snake and Pig Goggles. And I know that I lent those my pair to Trish today, and she was checking them out. So
Cool.
they've been really great in terms of, because I've just been getting so many headaches and stuff from wearing goggles that I find that Snake and Pig really alleviate that with, the cushion and all that. Anyway, today Casey is going to be talking about swimming efficiently. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Casey.
I wonder if we can mute Nicole.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, awesome. So I have some slides for you. I'm guessing all of you guys are fairly seasoned swimmers. So we'll just go over a few random things that, technique-wise that you might be doing that you don't realize you're doing. I'm guessing everybody here is pretty good at reaching their race distance, so we won't have to talk too many about things about that. But I would love to take questions during, after, etc. So feel free to interrupt me at any time. Um, there's nothing sacred about this slide deck, so we'll just roll through it. And I do have a few movies. I used to do a lot of swim video analysis, so I think that'll be fun to take a look at a few swimmers. And my cat has joined us. Hopefully you won't be able to hear her. All right, so there we go. Okay, so in the olden times, I used to be a USAT coach and I was a swimming focused one. And the reason for that is that I've been swimming for a really long time. So I'm currently 52 and I've been swimming competitively since I was 5, unlike a lot of triathletes. So I did swim competitively through my second year of college. I wasn't amazing. I did not go to like UT Austin or anything. I swam Division 3, but really loved it. And did start to do long distance freestyle even as a kid. So apparently, foreshadowings of things to come. And my very first open water swim was not until I was in graduate school when I pulled together a relay team of some friends and I did the swim leg in Lake Michigan when I was living in Chicago. And let me tell you, going to swim in open water for the first time as a strictly pool swimmer and like beach jumper, but not swimmer, was really, that was challenging. So I became a triathlete not until 2007 myself. Did I do my first one and then did a lot of them. I've not done an Ironman. Any of you guys Ironman people? Yeah, I haven't done one either. I've done plenty of 70.3s, love to swim. Don't I do like to run. I'm just not very good at it. Those two things tend to be, opposites. I've noticed. Um, in around 2010 or so, I became a USAT certified coach. And when I moved to Austin, really leaned into that full time and did a lot of swim video analysis, and have really enjoyed helping triathletes learn to swim. I don't teach kids how to swim. I'm not very good with ultra beginners, but anybody who's trying to do a triathlon and was having a tough time with the swim, which is like 90% of triathletes in my experience. I don't know about what you guys have noticed, but they do need a little help. So I'm gonna try to impart some of the things that I've learned from watching lots of triathletes over the years. And just so you know, I have actually swum a 10K, which is super long. So I think most people tend to think about an Ironman swim as just being crazy long, but there are other things out there, and there are people doing very, very long swims, not just the English Channel, but there's always stuff going on. So if you have one of these in your area, it might be a fun thing to consider. A 10K probably needs a little bit more logistical support, like you might need a kayaker, but they're kind of interesting. But it is, it's pretty serious training. And as Hillary mentioned, I've been with Snake and Pig, helping with the marketing side of things since about 2019. So that's been quite a long time now. We could talk a little bit about that at the end if anybody's interested. So, in terms of swim training, um, Swimming is very technical, obviously, you guys know that. Plus, we have the whole open water element. So there's a lot that needs to go into what you're doing for your swim preparation. I knew people who did Ironman and they'd just show up at the pool and swim 4,000 yards and then just get out. And it was just all the same slow pace at whatever random technique felt good. And then they would leave, and open water skills probably consisted of showing up the morning of the race and making sure they had their wetsuit. So there are a lot of things that you can do in each of these three areas to set yourself up for success. And I just want to talk through a few of those. And do feel free to jump off of mute and ask questions at any time. So, and you guys know if you're confident in your ability to do all three of these things, it's really going to help. So if there are any beginners watching this recording, I really encourage you to work on all three things. So let's start with technique. And technique is really about efficiency. Um, so the question is, how hard are you working and what are you getting for it? Some people um, really want to swim easy and they don't swim very fast. I always wanted to swim relatively easy and be very fast. So that was always my goal. And it just depends on what level of work you're willing to put in. But you don't want to do things that aren't going to produce speed. And a lot of people in the water are doing a lot of things that work against them. So drag, obviously, the water is working against you just to begin with. We know this. Biking and running, you only have to go through air, but water's super viscous. In addition to this, there are so many things about the way that your body moves in water that can just make you slower. You have to somehow be invisible to the water so that it's not slowing you down, and yet move the water in a way that pushes you forward. So getting rid of a lot of things that make you slow, that's a high priority, but you also have to start doing things that would make you fast because a lot of people are not doing those. So I want to touch on some of these. The things that make you slow, I think, are a little bit more on our radar, and I'll try to get to some of the things about propulsion as well. So I have these two pictures here. These are just two screen grabs of some videos that I have from olden days. And you can see some good and some not good things about each one of these swimmers. So let's just talk about a few things that slow you down. And some of these may ring a bell, or they may be things that you're seeing your lane mates doing, or they're seeing you doing, for example, and maybe they can tell you. Maybe Hillary can spot some of these next time she swims with one of you. So these are just two examples of things that could slow you down. And I think this is something that people know about. Having draggy legs is always going to be a problem. So, you want to make the amount of you that the water sees be as little as possible. So if you could fit yourself through a tiny hoop, then you're not going to have as much drag. But this guy has his legs a little bit lower than this woman. And one of the things that I like to use just for myself as an indicator of where my legs are, because frankly, I don't kick. I know some people are really into kicking. I'm an anti-kicker, so I kick as little as possible. And the way I know that I'm kicking just enough is if I can do what this woman is doing. Where's my arrow? Here's my arrow. She is touching the surface. And you don't need to break the surface a lot, but if you can feel it with your heel, then you know that your legs are right there, and that's good enough. So you don't need to kick like a crazy person, but you should kick enough that you can feel the surface. So that's what I like about what she's doing. And he's got a little bit lower of legs, which is typical for guys. I mean, we could even blame it on his swim trunks, to be honest. But he needs to kick more toward the surface. But something that he's doing that I like is that he's got his toes nicely pointed. Do you guys see that? On the other hand, you can see she's got her toe pointed down as she's kicking downward. And this is something that ideally you want to avoid. And I've seen people who have very stiff ankles who almost can't point their toes at all. So if that's you, there is a stretch that you can do even right now while you're sitting in your chair watching this. If you just crossed your leg, you can just push your toe down to make a straight line with the front of your calf. Just a super gentle stretch just to bring it in line. And over time, if you just do that gently, a few times a day, you will get a little bit more stretchiness. If that doesn't give you much of a stretch and you're pretty limber in general, you can sit on your legs on the ground. I know that's tough for people whose knees aren't so happy. But if your knees can deal with that, you can actually sit on your legs and then pull your knees up a little bit, and that will make your ankles even more stretchy. So it makes it easier to point your toes. If you look at guys like Michael Phelps, they're almost double jointed in their ankles. They can kick really easily and they're not dragging their toes. So that does help. Um, and then, you also want to propel yourself forward, but you don't want to do it by wearing yourself out. There's a lot of wrong ways to push the water behind you so that you push yourself forward. And some of those ways would be to just push straight down on the water. Other ways would be to drop your elbow, and we'll see pictures of some of these. But if you kind of take a look at this bottom picture, what you can see here is she's got her forearm and her hand perpendicular to her body. And if she's pushing the water back all the way toward her hip, then she's pushing the water back and the body forward. And if you're got your propulsion going in that direction, that's always going to give you speed and not just be wasted effort. So a couple of things just for priorities, for any beginners who are watching this later, the number one thing you want to remember to do is to breathe out. Everybody's hyper focused on breathing in. Everybody wants air. But if you don't make room for the air by pushing the breath out when you put your face back in the water, then you're just going to end up with a problem. So if you ever get yourself in a situation in open water where you're kind of freaking out, maybe there's a lot of people around you or you got stuck in some weeds or something. I mean, there's always something that can happen. Just focus on making sure that you're breathing out because this will help to calm you down and just help you to breathe better. So one of the drills that I like that I'll mention later is bubble, bubble, breathe, which is if you're swimming bilaterally and you're breathing every 3, then you're making sure that you're blowing out bubbles on those other 2 strokes. So that can just be a useful mantra to say to yourself, where you can actually say it out loud. And when you say the word bubble, you will tend to exhale, which is what you're aiming to do. Overcoming drag is always super important. So you can constantly be checking in with yourself. Say you were doing 10 100s, maybe on the second or the third length of every 100, you think, okay, where are my legs? And then if you can kick the surface, then your legs are where they should be. This can help you to overcome some drag. And then in addition to things you can do wrong with your legs, there's a ton of things that go wrong while you breathe. And there's pictures of 2 of these on the side. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. So we just talked about, everybody's really focused on getting air in. You can forget to exhale. You can also forget everything else that your body is doing at the moment that you're inhaling. And so a lot of things can go wrong. So here's a few. So sometimes people will lift their head really high. If in an ideal world, when you tilt your head, you might actually be able to see underwater and above water at the same time. Okay, this is not going to work in open water, but in a pool situation, that could work. And that's telling you that your head's not lifting. You're keeping the front of your head down. Because every time your head lifts, your legs fall. Another thing that people really do, especially people who are new to swimming, is they want to push their head up. So they'll push their arm down. And that is going to basically cause that one arm stroke to be useless. So let's say you prefer to breathe on your right side. Every time you breathe on the right side, your left arm does something unuseful. You're basically only swimming with your right arm. You've thrown away 50% of your strokes because you're not paying attention to your propulsion while you're inhaling. Crossing over would be where your hand goes in front of your head. And this can lead to all kinds of zigzag swimming in open water and really causing yourself to go over a lot of distance. So you want to avoid that. And then the other thing, okay, so this guy on the bottom is doing the pushing down, or his arms just falling underneath him. And he's got a bit of a scissor that's helping to balance him because his arm is not helping him. And this guy over here is also over rotating. You can see, almost his whole face as he's taking this breath. So those are some things that you want to avoid doing while you breathe. You want to really focus on propulsion all the time and taking little sips of air when you need them instead of letting all these things go wrong. Any questions about mishaps with technique before we move on?
Yeah, I have a quick question. When
Yeah.
you're swimming, in open water, and especially
Mhm.
when it gets choppy, you have a tendency to raise your head higher, so that you can breathe in normally, you
Yep.
know, but then that's going to, you know, take you out of proper body position. Is there a drill that you can do to help, while turning your head enough? Or maybe it's a matter of flexibility, turning your head enough to get air in choppy water while still maintaining a proper, body position.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a question of how are the waves actually hitting you? And this is
Mhm.
another reason why bilateral breathing can be a really good thing to be practicing in the pool, because sometimes you're going to have to breathe on your non-preferred side just because that's where you're not going to get a mouthful of water. So I've had the experience where it seemed like the waves were coming straight at me. So yeah, the sighting was a real challenge. Like you really had to lift your head up a lot. That might be a point where you just have to hope that you're swimming straight and just throw in some breaststroke here and there to get a good look and then put your head down and go. And I actually kind of curved my head backwards to try to get a really well protected breath on the right side. So yeah, that can be tricky. But this trick of occasionally checking in with where your legs are, if you forgot to check on, hey, are my legs dragging for like half of your mile swim, then you might really be doing yourself in. But let's say you had to lift your head a little bit more to sight or to get a breath, and you just kicked a little bit more while you were doing that. That could help keep your body position from needing to readjust quite so much, and just checking in with your legs here and there just to make sure. It's just a good thing to remember so that you're not dragging without thinking about it. I don't know if that answered
Okay.
your question.
Okay. No, thanks.
Yeah. But I think giving a little bit more kick while your head is up, that can be helpful. Anybody else? All right. And then I mentioned before, improving your propulsion is all about physics. If you're on a skateboard, to push the skateboard forward, you have to push with your foot kind of backwards on the ground. And with water, if you push it back, you go forward. If you push it down, you go up. So if you push down with your arm, your head goes up, your legs go down. You didn't go anywhere. You just made yourself more draggy. So it's really important to be focusing on pushing the water back and doing that as much of your underwater stroke as possible. All right. So that's the first thing here. And then something else that I wanted to mention was that your arm position at the front of your stroke can set you up for failure or perfection at doing this. So this guy is kind of floating his arm forward, and you can see that his fingers are level, which is good. You don't want to show your fingertips up. It's like putting up a stop sign. Stop, going to kill your momentum. But he is dropping his elbow here. So ideally, we'd want to see his arm geometry be kind of opposite of this, where his elbow is just a little higher than his fingertips. So you're not trying to get your fingertips close to the surface, but you do want your elbow to be above your fingertips basically all the time. Um, and get your arm as straight as you can, because if you reach a little more at the front, then you can push back over a longer distance. And this person, I'm not super wild about this crazy head position right here. It's good to have your head down. He might be looking a little bit too far forward, but she's trying to counterbalance her legs by just like ducking her head all the way under the surface. I wouldn't recommend this, but her arm position is going to set her up for a good pushback later on. So that's pretty good. Okay, anybody want to watch some movies? All right, let's watch a couple of videos here. And I think I need to stop sharing and start again on the media player. All right. So when I did video analysis, there were always 4 different angles. So we're gonna just kind of roll through the 4 angles for this person. And the first 2 are above the surface. And sometimes you can look amazing from above the surface, and there's all kinds of crazy going on underneath the surface. So I think we'll see a little bit of that. So she looks pretty good. You can see her feet breaking the surface, which is great. And she looks like she's probably got fairly good alignment at the front. She's even got a flip turn, super fancy. But now from this overhead shot, anybody see anything going wrong? I'm not going to do a great job of stopping at just the right time, but this arm is entering in front of her shoulder, which is just what you want. You want your hand to not enter in front of your head, but in front of your shoulder and slide forward. Her other arm is entering way off to the side as she's breathing to the opposite side, which means she's getting almost no extension on that side and not going to get an efficient pull with that arm. So you can see it entering way over here. So this is one of those cases where she's taking a breath, and what's happening while she's taking a breath is working against her pretty badly. So now we're going to take a look from under the water from the side. And she's got a decent pull with the right arm, but the other arm is not only going way out to the side, but it's also a really short stroke. So she's not reaching forward so that she can push back over a long distance. So she's really losing a lot there. And one of the drills that I'm going to talk about in a little bit is called the Unco drill. And it would really point out to her this stuff that's going on with that arm being weak. So that can be, if you don't mind using fins, it can be an amazing drill for not only working on your rhythm, but also making sure that you're propelling yourself forward when you're taking a breath, which can be a very tricky thing to do. And this is just the last angle where you can really see how far out to the side she's reaching with her left arm. It would be really interesting to see how she swims if she would breathe bilaterally. Some of these things that happen that are super asymmetric could possibly be fixed by just breathing every 3, or even alternating lengths, breathing on the right on one length, breathing on the left on the other, just so you're not always doing the same wrong thing all the time. All right, so that's our number 1. Now,
Actually, I have a question about that. So
yeah, for
if
sure.
you tend to breathe on one side, would you recommend, well, besides for the open water, learning bilaterally, would
Right.
you recommend, alternating the side just so that, as you develop your shoulders and your lat muscles, that, you're not asymmetrical as you develop your swimming?
Yeah, and it's not just about the strength, but about the things that could be wrong with your technique, just kind of smoothing those out a little bit more. So I do definitely recommend getting used to breathing on both sides. As a person who breathed only on the right for probably 25 years, it is not easy to learn, but it is definitely useful. And sometimes breathing every 3 is just hard. If you're trying to work hard or you're nervous or whatever, it's just not going to work that well. But if you can force yourself to breathe, right on one side and then left on the return. And when you get to a race, you're like, everything's up for grabs, right? You might swim half of the thing breaststroke. There's no style points given on open water swimming. So if you need, I mean, every time I race, I just breathe on the right side if I can, because I want to swim hard and I want to be comfortable. So I just do that. But when you're training, the more you can train yourself to be symmetrical, the better. And then, be aware of the things that you're doing wrong on your preferred side. But yeah, I think you're right. The strength ideally should be the same on both sides if you're propelling yourself well with both arms. That gal that we just saw, she's probably working herself into a shoulder injury on the left side, to be honest. So that's another thing to keep in mind is if you decide that you want to do a 5K or even a 10K, it is important to make sure that you're not having any weird niggles after a swim. Because if you do have something where your shoulders are very much out of alignment as you swim, those things compound as you add more mileage. So you want to make sure that your technique is good before you start piling on things for, an 8-mile swim, like Hillary's doing. She doesn't want to, end up with a frozen shoulder. So she's got to make sure that her technique is good and everything stays happy. So that's why seeing a coach just to look for anything really obvious or just having somebody film you with their iPhone can be super helpful. Even if you can't go below the surface, you can see some things from something like that overhead shot that I showed before in terms of alignment. Now with this guy, he's got low drag. We can see his feet breaking the surface just like the last one. Not too bad, but we do get an interesting surprise when we look at his overhead shot here. So let's see if I can get a better camera angle on it here. There we go. All right, and this might be a little hard to see for the untrained eye, but if you look at his spine, it is not a straight line with the direction of his propulsion. This guy is got a snake in his stroke. So everything from the line in front of you should go right through your head, right through between your cheeks and through the toes. We should have a nice straight line between all of those. And this guy has got a big bend going on in his spine. So one of the things that can be really tricky to feel when you're in the water is your core. But being aware of your core will help with your alignment in the water. It could make the difference between swimming an actual mile in your next Olympic and swimming a mile plus another quarter of a mile because you went all over the place. So some core awareness is good, and I'll give you a drill for that that can really help to just throw into your warm up for even just 50 yards and just keep you kind of aware of your core all through the rest of the day. Because this guy, he's probably swimming pretty straight. He doesn't have like any wicked crossover, but that snaking is definitely not helping him. That's something that he's doing that's not going to make him any better. And I just want to point out another thing he's doing that I see a lot. So when I say you need to push back on the water with your propulsion, what I'm talking about is with your forearm and your hand as a unit. What he's pushing back on is his fingers. See how his fingers are pushing back? But his elbow is way back behind. So if his elbow would be forward, I think actually, can I draw on this? Ooh, I can. If his elbow would be out here, and then his forearm and his hand would make a line, all of this surface area would be pushing the water back. And instead, he's pushing this much water back. So when you're thinking in your head, I'm pushing back, look at your arm. Some of the time when you're swimming, you might want to lift your head and just look at what your arms are actually doing and make sure that what you're pushing back with is actually your forearm and your hand and not just your fingertips. That's something I see a lot. Okay, I gotta get that off there. Clear all. Okay. All right. Otherwise, I would say his body position looks good. Even though he's looking pretty far forward, his legs are staying up. Some people are blessed with good body position. And let's see how we look from the front. So the thing that I like to see from the front here is in terms of geometry, eventually he's going to end up with his elbow out, and that's what you want. You don't want to see a straight arm pushing straight down, because again, that pushes your head up and your legs down, but doesn't push you forward. So that's looking pretty good so far. All right, and then we've got a big problem going on here. As he's finishing up his breath, his arm has come underneath his body. And this might be due to or causing the snaking. In terms of alignment, you always want to have your hand and your shoulder lined up. When your hand goes in the water, it should be right in front of your shoulder. As it pushes back, it should stay aligned with your shoulder. And that's going to protect your shoulder and keep you from doing all these weird alignment things. So his elbow should be out here and his hand should be lined up straight in front of his shoulder here. Instead, it's under his body. And that is definitely not helping him to balance well in the water or keeping him aligned or probably propelling him very well. This is again falls under that heading of wacky things that happen when you take a breath. Some of the times his hand is all the way to the other side of his body. All right. So how are you going to know if you're doing any of these things? You're probably not going to be able to feel it. You're going to have to see it. So you can either see it with your own eyes by watching what your hand is doing in front of you or asking someone to look for you. Those can point out some of these things. But there are some drills that you can do that will give you a sense of, something seems a bit odd. Maybe I should check this out. Something's a little wacky. So I want to talk about a couple of my favorite drills. All right. And here we go. Okay. So I'm from the Swim Smooth family of stuff, and they are not super popular in America. So maybe you guys have never heard of them. And they're not as easy to follow online as they used to be, but these are some of their drills. And I think some of the tri-dot drills are similar or used to be similar, Hillary. So if you see anything that has a different name, just go ahead and call it out. So bubble, bubble, breathe is the thing that I mentioned before that will focus you on making sure that you're exhaling. So some of these are just like things that you're going to think in your head or one little thing that you're going to look at. And you might not even think of it as being a drill that's bringing awareness to something that helps you. So, those are the drills that I like. I want to get in, I want to get the kinks out in about 200, 400 yards, and then just have some awareness drilling basically, and then get into my main set because you're really there to do the main set. The drills don't need to take up half your time. And things like bubble, bubble, breathe, you can carry into your main set. You can carry them into open water, just helping you remember to exhale. This is the one that I love for if your core is not turned on or you are way out of alignment. So if you take your buoy and squeeze it between your ankles, and they even make this wacky, Finesse makes this weird buoy that you can like clamps your feet in. I used to have one of those. It's very difficult because you have to be squeezing your legs together, and it will tell you if your core is not on because you'll be all over the place. And you only have to do this for like one length and you've got the message, you know. So if core awareness is something you need, maybe you just want to throw a length of this into every workout. But it can be very eye-opening.
You can also put a strap around your ankles, right?
Well,
Like
see,
I
this
have
is even more evil. Yes, because then you don't have any buoyancy added. Then you're just dragging. Yes.
That's
And
hard.
that is also a really good drill, but I would not recommend that to a beginner. It would never come back. But yes, that is a really good one. And I've seen pros like put a t-shirt on that band for even extra drag, which is just extra evil. And I'll show you another drag thing that I really love that's a little bit less evil. Here's one that is done with fins. You kick on your side with your arm out in front, but your face pointing down at the bottom of the pool as if you had taken a regular freestyle, kept your head where you would normally be, and then just rotated your body 90 degrees. And with this one, you get a feel for your arm being lined up with your shoulder out in front, with your elbow slightly above your fingertips, and your fingertips can be ever so slightly pointing downward, but just a little bit. And then if you take a breath from looking straight down to looking to the side, your arm shouldn't move at all because there is no need to push down with your arm to take a breath. You just turn your head. So if pushing down is a thing that you do, this can really help. You could just kick the whole length on one side, just taking a breath whenever you need without that arm ever moving. That is the point of that. And then when you get into 616, what you're doing is you're on one side, you take a breath, and then you take a stroke with with the free arm that was behind you and flip over to the other side without your head moving. So you take a breath, your head comes back down, your body then shifts to a 180. So now your other arm is in front, and then you breathe to the other side. So this again teaches you how to get your arms into the right position and breathe out pushing down. So that's a lot. I think just kicking on your side without pushing your arm down can be a revelation for some folks. Sculling is my all-time favorite drill. I've been doing this since I was 5. My coach always used to say, okay, get your arms over the barrel. Honestly, as a 10-year-old, I had no clue what he was talking about. No idea. Now I do, and it's wonderful. So there are a couple of positions you can do sculling. You can do sculling way out at the front of your stroke where your arms are almost straight. But the one that I like to do is where your elbows are kind of out straight from your shoulders. And let's see if I can get this on camera. Kind of here, and then you're just pushing in and out with your hands. So it's a very subtle movement. Your legs are with the buoy for this, there's no kicking. And the goal is to really get this elbows up thing ingrained into your head. And if you can propel yourself forward in that position, you only need to do this. And what I really love to do is to do this for only like half of the length. And then in the middle of the pool, you switch to regular freestyle. And you're so aware of what you're doing in your propulsive part of your stroke when you're drilling this, that when you get into the freestyle, you also stay really focused on it. And you can practice with that skull way out at the front so that as soon as you've fully extended and you start to catch, you're already thinking about pushing on the water instead of just kind of like mindlessly doing whatever you're doing until about halfway through your propulsion. And that can be really powerful. So I love to do like skull for half, swim for half, skull for half, swim for half, just over and over again for like 100, 200 yards. And it's really, really useful for getting propulsion going. And this,
12.5.
yeah, 12.5, exactly. Yeah, it's got to be exactly 12.5, or it's not right. No, somewhere in the middle. And then this drill is probably going to be really hard for me to explain. You can probably Google it. You can probably Google Unco drill and pull up a YouTube video. But this is a tricky drill that you do with fins on, because what it does is it isolates the arm that's supposed to be propelling you while you're taking a breath, but is probably doing nothing of the sort currently. So it's kind of like a one-arm drill, but it's not the one arm that you want. So let's say you're breathing on your right side. If I were to tell you to go do a one-arm drill, you'd probably stroke with your right arm and you'd breathe on your right. Unco, you're stroking with your left arm and breathing on your right, which means the only arm you get is the one that usually is terrible. It's usually going in at the wrong time. It's not pushing back. It's not propelling you anywhere. So this one, if you feel smooth in Unco, it means that your rhythm is good and you're propelling yourself when you're taking a breath, all the things that you want. And this is another one where you want to drill down and swim back. All of these, you want to mix them up with your regular freestyle, because the point is not to get really good at the drill. It's to get really good at the thing in your swimming that the drill is pointing out. So you would swim down, breathing on the right, only stroking with your left, and then come back, still breathing on your right only, but with both arms, but really, really thinking about what your left arm is doing when you're taking that right side breath. It probably sounds either confusing or simple, and then you get in the water, you're like, oh my God, this is the
hard.
craziest drill.
That sounds very hard.
Yeah, so I definitely encourage you to Google that thing, watch some videos, try it out at the pool with your fins on. Do not try without fins, and see how you go, because it is really good. Just a couple other ideas. When to drill, I would definitely, get in, shake off the tightness that is always there when you first get in the water, and then drill a little bit right before your main set. And then always drill, apply, drill, apply. That's really important. And then, I like to pick the drills that help me swim better. So you don't want to just do the same 4 drills just because they're fun, but whichever ones you feel actually help you, especially ones that you feel like if I were to focus on this in open water, I would probably actually swim well. Those are the ones you always want to do, and then keep them in mind as you hit your main set. Thinking about technique in open water is definitely a game changer because there's so many other things to think about. But if you focus on your technique, you'll probably swim better and everything will go better. All right, so this is not a great example of a workout, but it is kind of illustrating the warm up. I got 200 easy here. I've got some sighting practice in the pool. That's really great to do. Pick a thing on the side of the pool or in front of you that you're going to look for. Make sure that you actually saw it. You didn't just lift your head, but you actually saw the thing that you were trying to see. And then here's an example of throwing on a buoy and doing 350s, scull number 1 for about half the length, and then freestyle all the way back. And then I like to do a build set just to start to throw some intensity in. And then usually a race pace main set. This was for a group that wasn't going to get very much yardage done, so it was a pretty short set. If this were me, I'd probably be doing 6 to 8 at race pace if I was getting ready for an Olympic. And then that would be it for that. So in terms of swimming fitness, those are the things that I like to do. And when you're thinking about your main set, if you don't have a coach and you're doing it on your own, there are 3 things that I think are really important coming out of a main set. You want to pace yourself, which means you should be using the clock or a watch to tell you, how long did it take you to swim each of those and how long did you rest? Both of those things are important. So for instance, in this set, it's 200s with 30 seconds rest. I want to know, did I do all of those 200s in about 2:45 or 3 minutes? Or was the first one 2:45 and the next one was 3:30 and then the rest of them were 3:15 something? Like, are you really pacing yourself? Or are you blowing out the first one and then blowing yourself up? That's a really important skill to build because you want to know what your sustainable pace is when you get to open water where it's harder to measure. So pacing yourself is important. You want to do it over your race distance. Swimming is much easier to recover from than running, for example. So you should be swimming a main set that is your race distance, unless your race distance is 8 miles or, 2.4, you might not want to swim that too many times. But if you're swimming 1,500 meters, once you're in shape for the season, you should not be swimming a main set on a hard day that's shorter than your race distance. There's just no reason, unless you can only get to the pool for half an hour. And then you want to be practicing a hard pace, probably harder than you're going to swim on race day, to really get a good aerobic lactate threshold type of workout. This shouldn't just be whatever you can sustain for 1,500. You just go knock out that whole 1,500. You want to chunk it up into pieces. So not only so you can learn pacing, but so that you can swim it harder and really get fit. Remembering technique while you swim will help you swim faster. So if you've picked a really hard pace for yourself and you want to keep hitting it for, 4, 5, 6 intervals, you're probably going to have to really focus on how well you're swimming, not just how hard you're working, but is your technique good all the way to the end? Because things will start to fall apart if you're not paying attention. All right. I think that is it. Any questions on workout structure? Anybody want to disagree with me? I'm totally open to that.
Actually, I have a question
Yeah.
about, you're talking about your main set, always be, at least, as long as your race distance.
For
In
like your
terms of,
really quality day of the week. Yeah.
right. So if you're doing swims 3 times a week, is there
Mhm.
a day in which you're going just long and slow? Or are you always at,
If you
your
find that
main?
that helps you, yeah, you could certainly do that. So you don't need
Okay.
to do a lactate threshold set every time you go to the pool, but I would
Hmm.
recommend doing it once a week if you recover well enough from it. To make sure that it's fitting in with your other lactate or very long workouts. But in general, it's easier to recover from. So I think people don't like to do them because they are hard. But I really recommend them for swimming because I think most people's thing that they want to do is they want to just knock out their yards and get out and go home. So yeah, if you want to do a long swim and you find that you are focusing on your technique throughout that long swim and it's helping you to just kind of get in the zone and have a good technique focused long swim that's relatively easy, that's fine. But if you can swim hard over your whole race distance, chunked up into 200s, 300s, or 400s, I think that's a huge value that if you haven't done before is a great thing to try adding.
Okay.
Great question. All right. So in terms of open water skills, there are some things that you can do in the pool. I think sighting is always a good thing to try in the pool. If you're really brave and you have the lane to yourself, you can try swimming with your eyes closed just to see how straight you swim. That can be interesting. And then when you're able to get into open water, practicing sighting at the right frequency for you is really important because some people swim really straight and they can get away with only sighting every 10 breaths or so. And they stay on course. And the less you sight, probably the less you're going to drag and the better you're going to swim. And other people really do need to sight every 3 or 4 strokes because they tend to go off course a lot. And they should not get in the zone and just put their head down and go because they're going to end up with a kayak chasing them. So you need to know which one of those is you and then practice sighting at your right frequency all the time. Um, Again, don't forget your technique when you get to open water. If you've got your 1 or 2 things that you know if you focus on, you swim better. It could be just remembering to exhale. It could be as simple as that. It could be, where are my legs? It could be, um, am I actually pushing back on the water? Whatever it is, um, focus on the thing that helps you swim well in open water. And then, it can be an interesting experiment to actually try swimming as hard as you do in the pool in open water. I think a lot of people don't do that. I wouldn't do it over a long distance. You might want to do it for just, 30 seconds or a minute, chunk it up into little intervals. But it can be interesting to just try that because maybe you'll be willing to push your effort a little bit more in a race than you would have in the past, just because you were trying so hard to be comfortable and have an easy time breathing that you didn't even really try to swim hard in the open water as you have been training in the pool. And then something else that I like to do, oftentimes a race will not let you get in the water before the race starts, but if they do, it can be really useful to know um, how how long you can keep swimming before you have to stand up because you're going to swim so much faster than you're going to walk through water. If you can practice the exit, it's really useful. So I like knowing, can I swim all the way until my hands are touching and then stand up? Does that work? Or is it some other kind of exit? But the more you can swim, the quicker you're going to get to the finish in general. All right. And always be safe in open water. Something I've learned being part of a drowning prevention nonprofit is that nobody's drown proof, even us. So if you can swim with another person, always do, and never go without at least your buoy. You need some kind of water buddy, and that somebody needs to know that you're out there. Um, so just be safe out there. Any other questions about open water? All right, cool. All right. So yeah, for any beginners watching this later, exhaling, blowing bubbles into the water, this is where it starts. If you can't get in and swim, you can maybe put your mouth in the water and blow bubbles into the water with your eyes above the water, and then come back another time and try to make some progress to actually getting in there and swimming. And as you're getting more and more used to open water, never forget to exhale. It's always important. And then instead of thinking about all the stuff that might be lurking under the surface, try to focus on your technique and make this little bubble of technique focus around yourself. And then, you know, just do it. Do it a lot. Start small. Don't worry about how small it is. Just keep working at it. Another thing I like to tell people, and this goes for all of us, is to have a recovery stroke. Something where if your goggles filled up, or somebody kicked you in the face, or you took a big old mouthful of water, that you could do to keep your head up. Not necessarily make any progress in the water, but something that you could do to just kind of get your bearings again, fix whatever you need to fix, and then get back to freestyle. This could be flipping over on your back. That's really great for just getting water out of your goggles really fast. You have no idea where you are. Breaststroke for a couple of lengths will keep your head up, so you really have a good look. But you want to practice not only doing the stroke itself, but going back and forth between it and freestyle, because sometimes people will get into breaststroke and they're stuck there. They just can't get back to freestyle ever again, and it's never going to be as fast. So you can practice going back and forth between those. It's really helpful. And then, of course, all of us know nothing new on race day, right? No new socks you've never used, no new shoes, no new wetsuit you never swam in, no new goggles. Like everything's got to be tested. You know you like it. It's ready to go. All right, so let's do a little show and tell. I'm going to talk about agility paddles, tempo trainer, parachute, and I'll give you a little look at the snake and pig goggles too, and then we'll wrap it up. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Figure that out. All right. So these are my favorite paddles. They have a hole for your thumb. I really like these. There's no strap. If you're not pushing back on the water, they will fall off. And the place where I find they always fall off, and Hillary, tell me if this is the same as your experience, is at the back of the stroke. Because people do this weird like flippy thing at the back of their stroke, and then their paddle's all goofed up. Or if you go in wonky at the front, it'll tell you right away. But what you're trying to do is push back on the water without having to hold on. So you're not trying to like clamp your thumb down really hard. You just want it to float on your hand, and basically the water is holding it on. These are great. They come in 3 sizes. Everybody should have a pair of these, no matter your hand size. They're great for everybody. Tempo Trainer is a super fun tool for some people. You can set this to beep your stroke rate, which is interesting because then you can find out where your stroke rate is. Is it around 60, which is kind of around the sweet spot? Is it, some people you'll find it's like 40 and they're barely moving. Swimming's real easy. They're not putting any effort in, but they're not going anywhere. So 40 is too slow. If it's up around 80, it's probably too fast. And this, if you want something that's just going to be like a metronome in your head to just keep you focused on your swimming, you could even throw this on in open water and just swim to the beat. They won't let you do that in a race, but it can be useful. So it will also be, you can also set it into different modes so that it beeps at you at the end of each length. And that is a little brutal because everybody swims the first length too fast. And then you have to sit there and wait for it to beep. And then by the end, you're like, I'm going to die. I'm totally going to die. But it can open your eyes to how ungood your pace is. So that can be interesting as well. Another thing you can do is set it to beep at you like every 100, which is a little less horrible. And then you can feel, okay, I got ahead on that one. That's okay. Okay, I'm still doing all right. And then by the last 100 of the 400, you're like, oh wow, I'm really killing myself now. And there are some really cool sets that you can get from Swim Smooth called Red Mist, that if you are going to do an Ironman and you want to pace yourself well and you really want to kill that swim, those sets are amazing. And this is a really great tool for that. All right, here's the most evil thing I've ever swum with besides the band around the ankles. This tiny little square. It's so small, but it's attached to this long thing that goes around your waist. And it feels like a brick. But it's just this tiny little parachute, and it just adds some drag without I used to swim with the drag suit. Some people do things, and like you could put on really big paddles or something to add more it just does it without overloading your shoulders. So I kind of like that. For me, I feel like it's an empathy machine, because I do have a pretty fast pace. I can, when I'm in good shape, I can do like minute 30 hundreds. And I used to coach people who were doing, 215, 230 per hundred. And this thing slows me down to their speed. And it's as hard for me to breathe as it is for them. So it was really great for that. But that can be really tough. And what I like about the parachute is that if you have a dead spot in your stroke, some place where you're just like, ooh, I reached, and then nothing's happening, and then you start to pull, it's super obvious because all of a sudden you just came to a dead stop. You have no momentum because the parachute killed it. So you can find those dead spots and even them out. My other favorite thing is baby shampoo because you'll never have to worry about goggle fog ever again. It's so great. Um, I learned this trick a long time ago. I don't even know how old this bottle is, but yeah, I used to just put a little bit on my finger and just smear it around. I like to use the snake and pig tube. Also, you can dilute it up, and then it's got a little spongy tip on it, and then it's not like full strength, so you don't have to rinse it out. So that's kind of cool for a race day when you're trying to prep your goggles not near the water. And then I do use these. So I used to use, I don't know, Aquasphere Cayennes, Tier Nest Pros, all of those goggles. I think there's something about my eye spacing where the left side would always leak. My theory is that however handed you are, so I'm right-handed, you put that goggle cup like in the right spot, and then the left eye just gets whatever it gets. And so that's the why it leaks, because it's either like too far away or too close in or something like that. But those goggles used to be super uncomfortable after about 45 minutes. So I get to the end of master's practice and I'm just like readjusting my goggles every single interval. It was just brutal. And these I did my 10K in and I never touched them. So I really like them. So that's what I've got for y'all. Oh, wow, we're right at the hour. How about that? All right. Any other questions for me?
No, that was really comprehensive. Thank you
All
so
right, awesome.
much, Casey. That was great. Really appreciate your time today. And I'll send around a discount code for Sneak and Pig goggles if anybody wants to check them out. Or if you swim with me, you could check out mine. I'm good with
Yeah.
that.
It's always nice to try before you buy, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.